The schus of our learning should be a panacea. We're going to start today Beis Amud Beis, and it's 11 lines down. So it doesn't have any punctuation there as a place to start. But the line starts Yalfinan, and we're starting with the section. If you have like a break in your Gemara, it would say L'chaper. That's where we're going to start. We learned that 7 days before Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol is separated, sequestered, and he's held in this room called Lishkas Parhedron. Then we learned that the Kohen that's performing the Paraduma is also sequestered for 7 days. And we said, where's the source for this? So we said the source is from the 7 days of the inauguration, the Shivas Yimei Maluim, we had in Parsha Shmini last week. That over there, the Kohanim were separated for 7 days. Now in that pasuk it says, Kasherosa b'yom hazeh, as you did today, Hashem commanded you to atone for you. L'chaper aleh. So the Gemara says like this. The words lases, Hashem commanded you to do. Thank you. Very good. The words commanded you to do, that's teaching me the paraduma. Okay, good. Excellent. That to do is referring to Yom Kippur, to paraduma. And l'chaper, the word to atone, is referring to Yom Kippur. So the 7 days of being separated from his family and being held originally was by the Shivas Yimei Maluim, and from that pasuk we learned two more things. One is the paradum, and one is before Yom Kippur. The word that taught me for the paraduma was lases. The word that teaches me that it's before Yom Kippur is l'chaper, to atone. Makes sense. L'chaper, kapara, Yom Kippur, right? We had some questions over here. How do you know that lases is referring to the paraduma? Maybe the whole pasuk is just referring to Yom Kippur. So we said no, because we have the word tziva. Tziva was a gzeir shava. So we said, well, it says tziva in a lot of places. Well, maybe tziva, it says tziva by Yom Kippur. He says no, but tziva by Yom Kippur was after the fact, that he did as Hashem commanded, not Hashem commanded to do. That was after the fact. We said maybe tziva is referring to when it says by the karbanos. Over there it says b'yem tzavasai. We said no, tzavasai and tziva is different. Okay, l'chaper. That's where we're going to start. 11 lines down. To atone, elu ma'aseh yom kippur. That's a quote. What we learned before. This is referring to that word in the pasuk that says l'chaper. The pasuk is talking about the kohanim being sequestered for 7 days. That's talking about Yom Kippur. Ve'ima kapar the karbanos. How do you know l'chaper? I know Yom Kippur is a kapara, but maybe the other karbanos are also l'chaper. So what we're asking is like this: the Kohen Gadol gets separated for 7 days before Yom Kippur, but maybe every time someone has to bring a karban, or any time a Kohen is going to bring a karban, he should be held 7 days beforehand before he can perform the service. The Gemara says, "Miyadin hay Kohen misrame the boile prisha." Do we know which Kohen the lot is going to fall on? You know, they would do lotteries every morning. Which Kohen would get the service? Do we know which Kohen is going to win? That we're going to tell him that he has to separate 7 days before? Amri, what's the problem? We should have the whole family, because it was divided into 24 families of Kohanim, and those 24 families were divided into 6. So each day of the week. They had 24 families. Then each day of the week, they would have sub families, like cousins. So Sunday would be this cousin, and then Monday. So we should have, from last Sunday, there should be separated for the Sunday. For last Monday, it should be for the Monday. We could work it out. The Gemara says no. In other words, what we're asking over here is, how do you know that it's the Yom Kippur that they're being separated for? Maybe it's every karban that they need to be separated from. So the Gemara says, "Danim davar shekavua leizman midavar shekavua leizman." By the 7 days of the inauguration, that was a set time. They were being separated for Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So too, we're being separated for Yom Kippur. Not just some random Wednesday, any time someone brings an Ayla, a Chatas, or whatever, or maybe even the Karban Tamid, actually. It seems over here from Rashi that we're dealing with Karban Yachid. Yeah. If you notice, if you're following in the, looking at the Rashis here, we asked the question twice about Karbanas. We asked it yesterday, we asked it today. Yesterday we said, how do you know that the Tziva is referring to the Para Aduma? Maybe the Tziva is referring to Tzavasi of the Karbanas. Rashi over there said, Karbanas Tziva. Now we asked the question today. How do you know Lechaper is referring to Yom Kippur? Maybe Lechaper is referring to Karbanas. Rashi says Karban Yachid. Yeah, it's not 100% clear why he's doing that, but from the answer, it's clear why he's doing that from the Gemara's answer, but it's not clear why the Gemara is doing that. Why do we have to say that? Okay. So Dana davar shekavua leizman midavar shekavua leizman. Lafuke karbanos to kol yaimes. Just stam a karban. That's every day. That we're not going to sequester the kayanim just for that. Some random things here. For a special designated time, that we can learn from the miluim, from the inauguration. Just like that was the set day, so too for Yom Kippur. Maybe we should separate the kayanim for the regel, for the holidays. He says, well, we want to learn something similar to the inauguration. The inauguration was just once. Yom Kippur is just once a year. There's a problem with the word Bashana, because the inauguration is not once a year, but it is once a year. It's just once, much more than a year, but it is only once. It's less than once a year, but it's not more than once a year. And Yom Kippur is also once. It's also only once a year. This would tell me that if I'm going to learn from the inauguration, I can't learn to the other holidays because that's more than once a year. How many times? 3 times. The Gemara says, well, let's just separate the kayan or the kayanim for one of the holidays. We'll do it once a year. Okay. Well, that's a problem because we don't know which holiday. So if we don't know which holiday, then maybe we shouldn't do it at all. The Gemara says, no. We have options. And we'll just choose which one. Maybe we'll choose Chagamatzis. Chazal will choose for us which holiday. Well, that's the first holiday mentioned in the Torah, right? Maybe it's talking about Sukkot. Well, Sukkot has a lot of mitzvahs. Yeah, you have a lulav and a rava and the Nes Chamayim. You know, there's a lot going on Sukkot. Yeah. Right. It's like I am drinking Coca-Cola. We just had an advertisement for Eli Raffaello that sells the Lovim and Shregas. So let Chazal decide. We'll just do it once. And what we're doing over here is we're sort of like devil's advocate that will. How do you know that it's Yom Kippur that you have to be separate? That the Kohen Gadol needs to be separated? Maybe it's this or that or some other thing. So now we're trying. Maybe you have to be separated for the holidays. Gemara says, "Eladan precious shiva liyayim echad mi precious shiva liyayim echad ve'indan precious shiva l'shiva mi precious shiva liyayim echad." There's a lot of preparation. 7 days of preparation that goes into a one-day ceremony. So what we're doing here, the Shiva Simei Miluim was a 7-day preparation. It's like a wedding. 7 days preparation for a one day of the inauguration, which was Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So what we want to do is we want to separate the Kohen Gadol 7 days before Yom Kippur, which is one day. That's comparable to the Shiva Simei Miluim, which is 7 days in preparation for the one day of Rosh Chodesh Nisan. However, if you would do a separation for the holiday, then you would be separating 7 days for a 7-day holiday, and that we don't have any precedent for. The Gemara says, well, I know of a holiday that's 1 day. Maybe that's the holiday. That's exactly it. Separate for Shmini Atzeres. 7 days for the 1-day holiday of Shmini Atzeres. Says, well, it's not a perfect match because Danan Davar Shein Kedusha Lefanav Midavar Shein Kedusha Lefanav. From the 23rd of Adar was no special holiday. They just separated 23 until Rosh Chodesh Nisan. There was no Kedusha before, there was no holiday before Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So we want to separate the Kohen Gadol for 7 days before a holiday that's not a holiday. We don't want to separate him on a holiday. So if we're going to separate him for Shmini Atzeres, we're separating him 7 days during a holiday, and that wasn't comparable to the original of the Shiva Simei Milur. We don't want to separate him now for 7 days, and we're going to learn that from something that did not have a holiday before.
How would he celebrate? So would be separated?
Yeah, how would he celebrate? Right. Rabbi Eliezer in Masech Sukkah was very against people going away from their home. Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkenes. Yeah, no.
There you go, Daniel.
He said, I forget, someone came to visit him. He said, you don't celebrate the holiday. What are you doing? You have to stay home. Yeah, So, yeah.
What wasn't the main point of the separation to refrain from marital relations so he wouldn't be Tameh from Anita?
Right. That's what the Gemara is going to suggest.
So you can say just don't have relations with his wife for 7 days.
Right. It turns out that I think there were other reasons also, and it was like preparations and learning and practicing. We'll see in the Gemara a few daf down what the ultimate purpose was. Yeah, that sounds like an easier solution. It'll be whatever, just like she's a Nida. Imagine she's a Nida. Okay. 1 second. You're telling me that we don't want to separate him for a holiday that doesn't have a holiness before it, that doesn't have a holiday before it. Why not? It should be all the more so. If you separate him for a holiday that doesn't have a holiness before it, for sure you should be able to separate him from a holiday that does have a holiness before it. If it's just a holiday, just stam in the middle of the week, you have to separate. Is it not all the more so that you should separate him? I'm not sure exactly what that does for that single day, the fact that it's coming from a holiday beforehand. No. Probably the concern that the Gemara is going to suggest is that it's possible that his wife was in Nida. He's going to live with his wife. She's tummy for 7 days. A Bayal Nida is his wife is a Suffolk Nida. That's right. Then he's going to become tummy for 7 days as well. That's the Gemara is going to give that suggestion. Yeah, we don't know. Right. I'm sorry. That could be right. No, if it's a Bayal Nida, it's 7 days. Right. But the problem is that he has to do the service. He has his own personal issues he's going to have to deal with. So Amar of Mesharshia Loi. Mesharshia says you can't make this Kal V'Chaimer because the pasuk says Hazeh. Ksiv Kazeh. Or Hazeh Ksiv. It says Hazeh. When you look back at the pasuk, Kashrasa B'Yom Hazeh. Tziv Hashem Lasi L'Chaper Aleichem. That means that we need it to be exact. And because this, although you can make a Kal V'Chaimer, but it's not exact. Okay. Ravashi Amar. So Ravashi says, are we left with a teretz? Yeah. So far, so good. We need a holiday that doesn't have a holiday beforehand, and we're going to separate the Kayan for that holiday. Now, the Gemara is ignoring Shavuos. The Gemara is going to ask it soon, but right here it looks like the Gemara is ignoring it. Ravashi says, "Miyaka midi the ikar regal loy by prisha, tafel di day by prisha." Does it make sense that the main holiday of Sukkot, the Kohanim can just walk right in, and this what's secondary to Sukkot, which is Shmini Atzeres, the Kohanim need to separate 7 days for them. What's secondary requires more preparation than for the main thing. Even if you want to tell me that Shmini Atzeres is its independent holiday, and there's two ways of looking at Shmini Atzeres. One is that it's a secondary holiday to Sukkot. Other one is that it's its own holiday. Two holidays. It happens to be one next to each other. And there is an opinion like that. Regel b'fnei atzmai. It's its own holiday. So that opinion says that it's regel b'fnei atzmai only for certain halachas. Hani mili le'inyan pazer kashev. It's a trivia question. What's pazer kashev? It's a Rashi Tevis. That's what I was going to say. So, what does pazer kashev stand for? So it's a machlekes Rashi Taisves, and Rashi himself has different interpretations here and in Sukkah. Okay, we have to go through one at a time. First thing is the pay from pazer. Stands for pious. Pious means lotteries. They would choose Kohanim, who would do the service. Now, throughout the days of Sukkot, there were a lot of sacrifices. There were 14 sheep that were brought. There was, I think, a par and an ayel then there was a sar, I think. But it started off with 14 parim, 14 cows. And then it worked its way down. Every day was 13, 12, 11, 10, and it corresponded to the nations of the world. So what happened is all 24 mishmaris, all 24 families of Canaan would come to the Beis Hamikdash. And they would divide up all of those animals who would do what. They didn't do the lotteries. You would just get your animals and do that. When it came to Shmini Atzeres, then they would do a lottery who would get to do it. So the first thing is Shmini Atzeres is different, a regel b'fnei atzmai, because it doesn't go under the same allotment of which karbanos go to which family as was done for the first 7 days. We started over with the new system of, okay, today's a lottery. The karbanos were much less. There's only one part. Okay. Second thing is the Zayin is the Zman. That means, Rashi says, it gets its own Shechianu. Pesach, if you remember, we didn't say Shechianu on the last days. Shmini Atzeres, we do say Shechianu. Regel b'fnei atzmai, it's its own holiday. The next thing is regel atzmai. So Rashi over here says that it's not called Chag HaSukkos. Rashi somewhere else says that you don't have to sit in the sukkah. Rashi in Sukkah says that. Now we sit in the sukkah, we don't say a bracha, that's a whole discussion. Okay, the Kuf says that it's a karban latzmai. It doesn't have the same holidays. It doesn't have the same sacrifices as the first days of Sukkot. The Shin is shir latzmai. It gets its own song. If you look in Masech the Sukkah, Daf Nun Hey, it tells you what song they sang each of the days. And it doesn't, for Shmini Atzeres, it was in a different category. It doesn't have that. There's a Rashi Tevis that Rashi says, Hum bihi, he's quoting. Those are the initial words of the letters of the psukim that the verses were. Havel Hashem b'nei Elam, whatever. Then the last one is bracha la'atzmai. Rashi over here says that when they would leave, they would bless the king. Taisus didn't learn that. Taisus said something else. That we say in Birkas Hamazon, we don't say, in Yalav Yav, we don't say Yom Chag HaSukkos, we say Shmini Atzeres HaChag Hazeh. That's the base. Okay, all of that was just to explain that Rashi Tevis, Pazer Kashev. What are we saying here? we're saying that Rav Ashi says it's impossible that we're going to separate the Kayanim for Shmini Atzeres when for the main holiday we don't separate them. So are you going to tell me that that's an independent holiday? He says, yeah, I know it's an independent holiday according to that opinion, but that's only for Pazer Kashev. Avale Inyan Tashlumin, but if you didn't bring your Karbanos, you're supposed to bring Karbanos when you go to the Beis HaMikdash. You didn't bring your Karbanos over Sukkot, you can still bring it Shmini Atzeres, Tashlumin Derishanu. The Tanan, because it's taught in the Mishnah, Mishlei Chag B'Yem Tov Rishon Shel Chag, Chag V'Helech Kol Regal Kulei, B'Yem Tov Achin Shel Chag. If you didn't bring your Karban Chagiga, you can bring it the rest of Sukkot, and you can even bring it on Shmini Atzeres. See, an independent holiday. They only meant it's an independent holiday for those 6 things, but everyone agrees to this. See, it's a secondary holiday to Sukkot. Why should it be that we should separate the Kayanim for a secondary holiday and for the main holiday we didn't separate them? Ve'ima Atzeres. This is the question I was waiting for. What about Shavuos? It's a single day. Well, we can keep 2, but it's a one-day holiday officially. Yeah, the Prisha Shiva Liyay Mechadu. We'll separate them 7 days just for one day. How do you know it's Yom Kippur? Separating for the holiday of Shavuos. Amar Rababa. Rababa says, Danan par echad v'ayal echad mi par echad v'ayal echad lafuki atzeres t'shnei elim ninu. It gets a little technical here. By the Miluim, Rashi quotes the pasuk that says, "Kach lecha egel ben bakar lechatas v'ayel la'ayla." You should take for you an egel, a calf, and a calf is from the cow family, the young cow. An egel is a young cow, and the ram. And by Yom Kippur, it says that the Kohen Gadol was supposed to take a par and an ayel. However, on Shavuos, when he brought the 2 loaves of bread, it says that what came along with the 2 loaves of bread? Shnei elim. So we say our comparison to the inauguration matches better with Yom Kippur than it matches with Shavuos. Because Shavuos is 2 rams. There's a little bit of an issue. When you get to we have different mentions of the holidays in the Torah. So in Parshas Achri Ma'is, it talks about the service that's done on Yom Kippur. It's the Yom Kippur service that's done in Parshas Achri Ma'is. When we get to Parshas Pinchas, we discuss the additional sacrifices that are brought on each holiday. One of the additional sacrifices that's brought, the Karban Musaf that's brought in Parshas, that says that in Parshas Pinchas that's brought on Yom Kippur is an ayel. Now in Parshas Achri Ma'is, there's also an ayel. There's machlekes if that's the reference to the same ayel, or if that's a separate ayel. If it's the same ayel, so then we have what par and an ayel on Yom Kippur. Oh, that's similar to the par and ayel by the inauguration, which is by Shivas Yemei, so it matches perfectly. That's how we know that you have to separate before Yom Kippur. But if I learn that the ayel of Parshas Achri Ma'is is not the same ayel as Parshas Pinchas, how many elim do I have on Yom Kippur? I have 2. It doesn't match. The Tanya was taught in the Brisa. Rebbe says, that's Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Ayel echad hu ha'amar kan hu ha'amar Parshas Pekudim. It's one ayel. The one that says in Parshas Achri Ma'is is the same one that it's referring to when it talks about the Karban Musaf. Rabbi Elazar bar Reb Shimon Aimer. Rabbi Elazar bar Reb Shimon says that's Reb Shimon by Yochai's son. He says Shnei Elim, the 2 separate sacrifices. Mamish pshat in the pasuk. It is a machlekes pshat in what the pasuk is talking about in Parshas Pinchas. Shnei Elim, echad amar kan, v'echad amar Parshas Pekudim. They're separate. According to that, we have a question. It doesn't match perfectly with the Shivas Yemei Meluah, with the inauguration. Gemara says, Afilu Teimar Rabbi Elazar bar Shimon. Even if you say it's Rabbi Elazar bar Shimon, it still matches perfectly. Why? Pasam chad l'chay v'sayayim v'chad l'musafin. Lafuki atzeres d'tavayim chay v'sayayim nenu. Goes like this. There's a theme to the holiday. And then I have a Karban Musaf. Holiday has a theme. What's the theme to Shavuos? Well, there's 2 loaves of bread that are brought. The cheesecake, right? 2 loaves of bread that are brought. They said, what's the Shabbos? The Shabbos is Shalom. So what's the theme to Shavuos in the Beis Hamikdash was the 2 loaves of bread that came together with the 2 rams. Now, in addition to that, there was a carbon musaf, but that wasn't the theme of the holiday. What's the theme of Yom Kippur is the Avodah. Then I have a carbon musaf. Like every holiday has a carbon musaf, but that wasn't the Avodas Yom Kippur. So even though Rabbi Elazar Bar Shimon says that I have a carbon musaf, and I have the holiday of the theme, the 2 Elim. One is the theme of the day, and one is the carbon musaf. Yeah, 2 Elim. It doesn't match with the Shivas Yimei Melom, with the inauguration. He says yes, it does match, because one of them is for the theme of the day, and the other one is a carbon musaf. That's, we're not comparing. By the Shivas Yimei Melom, there wasn't a musaf, but that was the theme of the day. It matched the theme, the Aveda Sayayim, the Chayva Sayayim, that matches. Okay, so we have an answer. Why don't we say that you have to separate 7 days before Shavuos? Because Shavuos has 2 rams. Yom Kippur matches perfectly. There's only 1 ram. There's an opinion that says 2. That the second one doesn't count. Ve'ima Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is officially 1 day. We keep 2, even in Eretz Yisrael they keep 2, but that's 1 day. The Prisha Shiva L'Yom Echadu. They would separate 7 days before Rosh Hashanah. Amar Abavo, Danan Par Vayal Shalemi Par Vayal Shalela Fuki Atzeres Rosh Hashanah the Tzibur Nino. We have one more factor here that comes in that says that it's not comparable, because by the inauguration it said Kach Lecha Egel, take for you. In Yom Kippur it says B'zois Yavai Arin El HaKodesh Bepar Ben Bakar V'ayel Lechat. It says that Aaron had his own sacrifices, and then he brought sacrifices for the community. And by the inauguration, he had his own. It was his own sacrifices. Kach Lecha. If that's the case, then what we're doing is we're comparing Aaron's personal sacrifices, which match by the inauguration to Yom Kippur, which do not match to the sacrifices of Rosh Hashanah, and let's throw in Shavuos as well, even though we decided already that doesn't fit anyway. But those are community offerings. Umar says, well, it's a good answer, only according to one opinion. When the pasuk says, take for you, what does that mean? So one opinion says, Mishalacha. That means it needs to come from your own bank account. Aaron had to pay for it. Where did that money come from? That probably came from the community. I don't know. He didn't have a private business. But whatever it is, it's from his own funds. It doesn't come from the community shkalim, right? It was money that belonged to Aaron. He would have to buy it. Vaseilacha, when it says make for you, mishalacha, that means it comes from his own bank account. Elamada mishal tzibar. I'm sorry. Oh yeah, all the almonds that grew on the staff. Right? Elamada mishal tzibar ma'yekal meimar. But if you say that kach lecha means not take from your own bank account, but take for you from the community, then there's really no difference between the sacrifices that came on Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah. So don't tell in the inauguration. So don't tell me that Yom Kippur matches the inauguration better, the Shivas Yimei Melom better than it does to Rosh Hashanah. They're all the same. The Tanya was taught in a brisa, kach lecha. When it says kach lecha, mishalecha, that means from your own funds. Basei lecha, take for you, mishalecha, from your own funds. This opinion is the one that fits. The yikchu elecha, when it says elecha, take to you, that means mishal tzibur. Where does it say kach lecha? Kach lecha, we're going to see it says by the Ketores, kach lecha samim, right? Kach lecha samim. Where does it say aseilecha? That's by the trumpets. That was Moshe was supposed to make the trumpets. Aseilecha. Where does it say v'yikvoilecha? That's by the paradum. It doesn't matter all of these references. all we're looking for is that it says kach lecha by the meluim. Did it mean that it was his own personal things? So far, yes. Divrei Rabbi Yoshia. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yoshia. Rabbi Yonasan says, Bein kach lecha, bein v'yikchoi lecha mishal tzibur. It doesn't matter what the wording is. Kach lecha, v'yikchoi lecha, it's always community funds. We don't have Aaron bringing his own personal sacrifice. It's interchangeable. Right. Now, Rabbi Yoshia and Rabbi Yonasan argue regularly. Like you're familiar with Abai and Rafa, right? Rabbi Kiva, Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yoshia and Rabbi Yonasan, they argue regularly. So here there's a machlekes pshat in the pasuk of kach lecha. Does it mean personal funds or does it mean community funds? If it's interchangeable, the way Rabbi Yonasan holds, by the way, Rabbi Yonasan may also be Rabbi Nassim. You take the yira. So then, so then why does it say kach lecha? Say v'yikchoi lecha, or say, I mean, there's got to be some emphasis here. What does it mean? Kach lecha, if it doesn't mean take for you, if it doesn't mean take from your own funds. Gemara says kiviyachal mishalachani writes yesem mishalahem. Gemara uses the word kiviyachal like it's chassidus. As if to say, kiviyachal means as if to say, like we can't really say this, but as if to say, Hashem is saying, I'd rather it really come from you, but Nebuch, I have to take it from the community. I would have enjoyed yours better, but this is what we're going to do. So kiviyachal, we don't want to say that, but as if to say kach lecha. So in other words, we're giving the credit or the preference to Aaron, even though it's not coming from Aaron's funds. Okay, so far we've reached the point that we were looking for, that we have an opinion that kach lecha doesn't mean it's Aaron's personal funds. If that's the case, then we have the question that it doesn't match perfectly, or it doesn't match better Yom Kippur to the inauguration than it does to Rosh Hashanah. Both of them have a parva ayil, or all three have a parva ayil, and it's 7 days preparation for 1 day. And how do you know that it's Yom Kippur of Rosh Hashanah? According to Rabbi Yonasan. Now we add in, because we're finishing the Brisa, Abachanan Amar Mishum Rabbi Lazar Kosav Echadaimer Vasisel Echa Arain Eitz, Kosav Echadaimer Vasu Arain Atzi Shitim. One says it should make for you the ark. Another one says they should make the ark. Va'asu Arain Atzi Shitim. They'll make an ark out of acacia wood or cedar wood. So what does it mean? You make or they make? So he answers, Haketzad, Kam is Manchi Yisrael Esim Ritzeni Shel Makam, Kam is Manchi Esim Ritzeni Shel Makam. Who are we going to attribute the making of the ark? That it depends on the people's avodah. If they're serving Hashem, then it's considered that they made it. If they're not serving Hashem, then it's considered that Moshe made it. Right? Moshe was involved in the construction. I'm sorry? Kavana. Someone, I forget who it was, someone said, they asked, maybe Rebbe Elimelech, that the scientists are saying that the Earth goes around the sun. But it seems from Torah sources that the sun goes around the Earth. So he said it depends on the avodah of the tzaddikim. Yeah, Rabbi Ginsburg had a whole Torah about what's the pshat in that. But anyway, okay. So it depends on the avodah, how we're doing. If we're doing well, then it's as if we made it. We get the. So Adka. Okay, back to our question. Our question was that we wanted to say that the comparison is better to Yom Kippur from the inauguration, from the Shiva Simei Miluim, because that was their personal, Aaron's personal karbanos. However, Rosh Hashanah was not a good comparison because it wasn't his personal karbanos. Now, the problem is that fits with Rabbi Yoshia, who Taka says that Kach Lecha means his personal. But according to Rabbi Yonasan, that says Kach Lecha doesn't tell me that it means it's his personal fund. So what do we do? So the Gemara says, Ad kan le pligi ela bekiches da'alma vasiyas da'alma. That machlekes was just talking about, like we mentioned, when it says Kach Lecha by the Ketores, when it says va'asei by the chatzaitzers. But in these instances, everyone agrees that it was Aaron's personal fund. Kiches de alma. What does kiches de alma? Kiches de alma means in general. When it says kach, when it says take, kach l'chasamim. That's in general. Asiyas de alma when it says in general, when it says to make, asei l'chashtei chatzaitzers kesef, make the two trumpets. Aval hanach. But when you're talking about these halachas right here, the halacha, the karbanis of inauguration, the Shivas Yemei Milum, in the karbanis of Yom Kippur, that is clear that it's Aaron's personal funds. It's clear. If you keep reading, you'll see it's impossible to read it any other way. It says b'meluim michti. Let's see, what does it say by the meluim, by the inauguration? Speak to the Jewish people. They should take a goat for a chatas. And then it goes on and it says, and it says to Aaron, take a egel ben bakar. It switched. Speak to the Jewish people. And then it says, speak to Aaron. You should take for you. So Lamali, why does it have to do that? That's very clear because the pasuk set up a contrast in its own section. This is for the Jewish people, and this is for Aaron, and this is meaning from his funds. B'Yom Kippurim we have the same thing. Michti, let's see. With this, Aaron should come in with a par ben bakal achatas, and then it says umeyesa das bnei Yisrael, and from the Jewish people yikach shnei siriyizim lachatas. From the Jewish people, you take the two goats, and then the pasuk continues. It says v'hikriv par achatas asher loi, that he offers the sacrifice that was his. See, that was clearly his.
Rabbi, but on Yom Kippur, Aaron is being sacrificed for himself, a kapara for himself, right? First there's a kapara himself, then the Kohanim, then
right.
This is, but on
by the inauguration,
yeah,
it doesn't tell me exactly, but it's clearly from his funds, and it's a chatas. What does it say? Is there a commentary there that says what was the chatas for? I'm not sure. Whatever the case is, it seems to be it's his personal sacrifice as opposed to community sacrifice. That we're seeing clearly that connection. Shema mina was Vikra Parchat Asrelai Lamali. Shema mina Hailai Mishalayu. It has to be his. Okay. Ravashi says we have another explanation. Done in parlachatas va'ayaloila, mi parlachatas va'ayaloila, lafuki Rosh Hashanah v'ateres to tavayu nino. Over here, the par and the ayal are separate karbanos, but over there, the par and the ayal are both oilas. What does it say? No, that's a par va'ayal. Okay, yeah. Ravina says, "Danan avayda b'kayin gadol me avayda b'kayin gadol afuka kulan kashyaisan the lava avayda b'kayin gadol nino." Yeah, he doesn't spell it out. He doesn't itemize it. He says, "Look, the avayda on the Shivas Yemei Miluim was done by Aaron. The avayda on Yom Kippur is done by Aaron. They're both the kayin gadol, done by the kayin gadol. Avayda of Rosh Hashanah, Shavuos. I know they're both one day." And the comparison is there in the day, but who's doing the avodah? Any kind, I mean, all the questions that you had, it's all any kayanim. So I've just resolved all your questions with one go. The comparison is the kayin gadol to the kayin gadol. Ikadamri, some say, Amar Avina, danan avodah tchila me avodah tchila lafuki hani delav tchila nino. We're going to compare the first avodah. Well, that's easy. First avodah of the inauguration, that's the first. And the Avodah of Yom Kippur. Says, my tchila, what do you mean first? What's Yom Kippur first? If you say that first means Kayin Gadol, Hainu Kamaisa, that's what the other version of Ravina. So let's try to get this defined, why you need a second version of Ravina. What is he referring to? Look at it like this. The inauguration was the first time the Mikdash was being used as a for the real thing. And the first time that the Kodesh HaKadoshim was used for a service is Yom Kippur. Because even though there could have been other sacrifices, but nothing went into the Kodesh HaKadoshim besides for the Ketairos that was brought in on Yom Kippur. Not into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So, Tchila B'Makim. You see the comparison here? Inauguration, we weren't going in by the inauguration to the Kodesh HaKadoshim, but nevertheless, it was the first time anything there was used. The Yom Kippur is the first time one place of it was used. Tchila B'Makim. Part of the Beis Hamikdash, part of the Mishkan that was used. Kiyasa Rav Dimi, Rav Yochanan. When Rav Dimi came, Rav Dimi was a traveler. So he brought statements that were said in Eretz Yisrael to Bavel. So he came, he said in the name of Rav Yochanan that Rav Yochanan Masni Chada. He only learned that there's one time that the Kayin needs to be separated. We learned that there's two times. Before the Para Aduma is performed, that ceremony, and before Yom Kippur. Rabbi Yochanan says it's only once. Rabbi Shua ben Levi Masni Tarti. Rabbi Shua ben Levi, he says that too. Exactly the way our whole Gemara would work. Rabbi Yochanan Masni Chada, Rabbi Yochanan taught one, Lasais lechaper. It says to do, to atone. Elu Ma'aseh Yom Kippurim. We're only talking about Yom Kippur. He drops the whole story with the Para Aduma. Rabbi Shua ben Levi Masni Tarti. Lasais. Rabbi Shua ben Levi teaches too. Lasais means Elu Ma'aseh Para, like our whole Gemara that we just had the whole day. Lechaper Elu Ma'aseh Yom Kippurim. To atone means Yom Kippur. The Gemara asks right away, Rabbi Yochanan Masni Chada v'anan tanan shivas yom kedim Yom Kippurim v'shivas yom kedim sheifas apara. We have two Mishnayos. What's Rabbi Yochanan doing? Rabbi Yochanan is an Amira. He knows the Mishnayos. Mishnayos say 7 days before the Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol is separated. 7 days before the Para Aduma, the Kohen is separated. What's he telling me? That it's only once. He says, Maila Ba'alma. That's not what we're going to learn from a pasuk. That's just something extra that we do before the Para Aduma is performed. We did an extra thing because we wanted to be extra strict because of what we did. With the Tzedukim, we allowed the Kayan that was Tameh to go to the mikveh and then to burn the para. So we did some extra things also. We separated. 1 second. Amar Rabbi Yumi bar Chilkiya, Amar Rav Machsia baridi, and here's the big problem. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. The whole statement came from Rabbi Yochanan. If you go back, this whole discussion came from Rabbi Yochanan. That's why it's important to mention the names of who's saying it, because now we have a huge problem. Rabbi Yochanan taught this to us that Lases is Para Aduma and Lechaper is Yom Kippur. The Gemara says Ehud the Rabbi. When we said it, that Rabbi Yochanan said it, yeah, Rabbi Yochanan said it, but it wasn't his own opinion. He said it in the name of his teacher. The Chiyasa Ravin, because when Ravin came, then we got the full story. Ravin was also a traveler. But when they said it originally, they didn't say in the name of the teacher, but because he left it out, now we have the full story. Ravin came and he told us, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Mishum Rabbi Yishmael. He said it in the name of Rabbi Yishmael. Lasis elamaisi par lechaper elamaisi Yom Kippurim. That Lasis means the Para Aduma, and Lechaper means Yom Kippur, and that was all said in the name of Rabbi Yishmael, but Rabbi Yochanan himself didn't learn it like that. Okay, let's leave it over here.
I'm surprised.